And let me just start by telling you what a habit is. A habit is a decision that you made at some point and then stopped making but continued acting on. So backing your car out of your driveway, the first couple of times you did it, it took this major dose of concentration, right? It's actually a very complicated thing because you have to do spatial calculations, look in mirrors, reversed images. But when you back your car out of your driveway now, you just do it. You don't even have to think about it, right? You can think about the meeting you have later that day. Cognition is moving from the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain where essentially decision-making occurs, the most evolutionary advanced part of the brain, into the basal ganglia, which is near the center of your skull and is one of the oldest parts of your brain, and almost every animal has a basal ganglia. As cognition moves from the prefrontal cortex into the basal ganglia, your brain works less and less hard. This is why habits feel so automatic. There's a woman named Wendy Wood who did a study when she was at Duke, and she followed around college students to try and figure out how much of their day was decision-making versus how much was habit. And what she found was that about 45% of all the behaviors that someone did in a day was habit. And this gets to sort of the way that habits work, which is that there's this thing called the habit loop.
So the first stage of every habit is a cue. The second stage is a craving or some kind of prediction that your brain makes. The third stage is the response, and then the fourth stage is the reward.
Biologically speaking, this process of those 4 stages, your brain is going through this endlessly and all the time and in the fraction of a second. So, take something like turning on the light switch. You walk into the room, cue, the room is dark. Craving, I predict that if I turn the light on, it'll be better and reduce uncertainty, and I want to be able to see. Response, I flip on the light switch. Reward, the room is now lit and I can see. And all of that happens in, a half a second. Mm-hmm. And so your brain is going through those cycles all the time. And these 4 stages form a feedback loop. And if you repeat them enough, then a habit becomes ingrained, or behavior you can do more or less automatically. And it's really what we're describing. It's really the process of learning. It's how you learn a new behavior, how you learn a habit.
Often when we set about to change something or to achieve something, the first step is almost always setting a goal. And you see this a lot, that the winners and losers in a particular domain often have the same goals. Like, every Olympian wants to win a gold medal. Every job candidate wants to get the job. So if the winners and the losers have the same goal, then the goal cannot be the thing that distinguishes the two. And the thing that distinguishes them is the process, the system behind the goal. And this is also important because achieving a goal often only changes your life for the moment. Simple example, say you have a messy room, and you get motivated and you set the goal to clean your room. Well, you can do that in an hour and then you have a clean room. But if you don't change the sloppy habits that led to a messy room in the first place, then you just end up with a dirty room again. So it's like treating a symptom without treating the cause. And habits are a better solution in that case, because if you fix the inputs, the outputs fix themselves automatically.
This is why I think identity is such a crucial issue with habits, is that true behavior change is really identity change, because you're not really looking to go from the type of person who doesn't run to the type of person who can run a 5K. That's fine, that's good, it's the outcome. But the goal is not to run a marathon, the goal is to become a runner. Mm-hmm. The goal is not to write a book, the goal is to become a writer.
I think that your habits are the way that you embody an identity, right? So like each time you make your bed, you embody the identity of someone who's clean and organized. Each time you go to the gym, you embody the identity of someone who's fit. Each time you sit down to write, you embody the identity of a writer. So you can sort of think of it as like each behavior casts a vote for the type of person that you want to become. And if you cast enough votes for that type of identity, you start to believe that about yourself, right? Like if you go to church for 20 years, you believe that you're religious. You study Spanish every Tuesday for 30 minutes, you believe that you are studious. So in that way, your habits provide evidence of your desired identity. And I think that is probably the ultimate reason that habits are so important. It's true, like habits can help you earn more money or be more productive or lose weight. And all that stuff is great. But in addition to the external results that habits provide, they also shape your sense of self. They are the engine or the avenue through which you learn to believe things about yourself.
So I came up with a law of behavior change for each stage. So for cue, let's make it obvious. For craving, make it attractive. For response, make it easy. And for reward, make it satisfying. And then you can invert each of those 4 for breaking a bad habit. So for bad habits, you want to make it invisible. You want to make the cue invisible. Make it unattractive, make it difficult, and make it unsatisfying. And again, these are like a toolbox for thinking about what can we practically do on a daily basis for building good habits and breaking bad ones.
This is the habit itself, and the easier a habit is, the less friction there's associated with a habit, the more likely you're going to be to do it. So the way that I like to describe this, imagine you have like a hose, right? And there's a bend in the middle. There's a little bit of water trickling out. If you want to increase the amount of water going through the hose, you have two options. You could either crank up the valve and force more water through, or you could just remove the bend and let it flow through naturally. And a lot of the time, advice is centered on cranking up the valve. It's like you need to try harder, you need grit, you need perseverance, you need motivation, you need to overcome the obstacles in your life. And all those things are fine, but I think they're all short-term solutions. You might be able to do that for a day or a week, but I've never consistently seen someone stick to positive habits in a negative environment. It's really hard to fight that day in and day out. The solution, I think, is to reduce friction. And there are a ton of ways you can do this. One way is just to scale the habit down.
So a lot of people are like, I'm going to kill it. I need an ambitious goal. Let me do 1,500 words, 2,000 words per day for this book I'm working on. Well, there's a very high probability that you're going to fall short of that. And then you will get demoralized, then you will get intimidated by the task, and then you will start procrastinating. So make the hurdle, make the success threshold really, really low. That's what I've done for my last 3 books. Is 2 crappy pages per day. That's all I need. If I don't end up using them, that's fine. I just need to get out 2 crappy pages. What ends up happening with the writing, with, say, exercise? If you're going to exercise, you're making a New Year's resolution, don't make it an hour a day, 4 times a week. No. 10, and if you don't have an exercise habit, 5 to 10 minutes at the gym 3 times a week, plenty. And in all of those cases, you will feel successful because you've checked your box for success. And then very often you will exceed that for extra credit. Well, I've already hit my 2 pages, but I'm feeling great and I'm in the flow. Maybe I'll do 10, maybe I'll do 20.
Because what you need to do is master the art of showing up. And a habit must be established before it can be improved, right? If you don't establish the habit, there's nothing to optimize. If you're not showing up at the gym every day, who cares about what workout you're doing? You're not even there. Usually when people think about building better habits, they optimize for the finish line, right? It's like, how much weight do I need to lose? How much money do I need to make? When can I finish this book? It's all focused on the result. But I think instead, if you optimize for the starting line, make it as easy as possible to start, scale it down, organize your environment so that all that stuff is set up. If you set your workout clothes out the night before, it's now easier to get into the workout the next day. But doing all that stuff to make it easy to show up, that is probably the more important piece early on.
So it's very easy to dismiss the importance of 1% changes. I have this little story that I like to tell that I feel like illustrates this. So imagine that you walk into a room, it's cold, you can see your breath, you've got this ice cube sitting on the table in front of you. It's like 25 degrees. And slowly you start to heat the room up, 26, 27, 28. Ice cube is still sitting there, 29, 30, 31. And then all of a sudden you go from 31 to 32 degrees, and it's a 1 degree shift, just like all the ones that came before it. But you hit this phase transition, this tipping point, and the ice cube starts to melt. And the process of building habits, or changing habits, and getting results is often a lot like that. You're showing up each day and you're putting work in. And you hear people say things like this. They'll say like, I've been running for a month, why can't I see a change in my body? Or I've been working on this book for 6 months now, the outline's still a mess, I feel like I haven't made any progress. And I think you can say that about pretty much any one of your habits. It's not the last sentence you write that writes the book, it's all the ones that came before. It's not the last workout you did that changes your body, it's all the ones that came before. It's not the last entry into your savings account that leads to retirement, it's all the ones that came before. And so seeing through the short term and seeing the long term is really about embracing that idea. It's about embracing that idea that the work is not being wasted, it's just being stored. You're building up the potential energy to release at a later point. And San Antonio Spurs, NBA basketball team, they've won 5 championships. They've got this quote in their locker room that I feel like encapsulates this idea. It says something to the effect of, when I feel like giving up, I think about the stonecutter who takes his hammer and bangs on the rock 100 times without it showing a crack. And then on the 101st blow, it splits in 2. And I know that it wasn't the 101st that did it, but all the 100 that came before.